Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're so happy to have you join us for this, our fifth, time is flying, webinar of 2022. It's great to have you all here. Just an FYI, we are recording. That means that you will also get a link to watch more of this later. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I will bring that chart back. Hopefully that was intriguing to some of you. It definitely relates to our special guest today and the topic of discussion. So for those of you who don't already know me, I'm Andrea Keith. I'm the Executive Director of Let Grow, and I'll be hosting today. My assistant, Erin, who's staying in the sideline with her little E on there, is helping me out with some of the things in the chat. And we'll get with Kevin here in just a couple of minutes. So hopefully everybody can hear me just fine. Matter of fact, a thumbs up from someone would be great. Always like to confirm that I'm not talking in a vacuum all by myself. So, all right. So our format today is an informal interview discussion, and we usually leave the last 15 minutes or so for questions from the audience. For today's session, though, we're going to start with some background information and have Kevin share an overview of his experience with Play Club, and then get into Q&A pretty quickly. We want to start with some questions that were pre-submitted and then into other questions from our audience. Few housekeeping things. As I mentioned, the webinar is being recorded. We will send out an email to everyone after this event, either later today or first thing tomorrow morning. And that will include a link to the recording. You'll also get the chat log, so you can see anything that's in there will be saved for you. And we will also share any links that are mentioned. And a special bonus, I've got a special Q&A from a superintendent in New York who's also a Let Grow Play Club fan that might be helpful for you. So as we get started, you are all on mute. If you have any questions that you'd like to address to Kevin or myself, please put those in the Q&A section of this. Erin will keep track of the chat, but it's best if you have a question you want answered to put it in the Q&A to make sure that we don't miss it. So without further ado, I will give you a quick background about Let Grow. You know, Let Grow is most widely known for our school programs, the Let Grow Project and the Play Club, and our resources and support for parents through our website, letgrow.org, and our Facebook group, Raising Independent Kids. We also do legislative work. You may have noticed in the chat that we have one guest from Oklahoma, and I see another one from Denver, Colorado, both of which are Let Grow states. We have what we call the Reasonable Independence Law. That is something that we are working to pass in states where sometimes people are afraid to let their kids out to play because somebody calls the cops, they get investigated by Child Protective Services. And so this law really helps define the fact that giving your child some independence by choice or necessity is not neglect, and hopefully encourages people to let their kids get out and play. I wanted to give you just a real quick background for myself. I am of a certain age. And when I grew up running around and playing all over the place with whomever was in the neighborhood. In fact, I moved so often during my childhood. I think I went to 6 or 7 different schools total. You know, the most important thing that my parents would look for is a neighborhood with kids and a good school district. And I was always appreciative when we moved in the middle of a school year, because that gave me instant entree into the local school kid network. In summers were a little bit harder, and we'd walk around and knock on doors to find out where the kids were. But play was a big part of my growing up, and I'm fairly certain it was a huge part of a lot of your childhoods as well. And if you know anything about Let Grow, our concern is that there's not much of that happening anymore. The last couple of generations have become much more likely to have children in adult supervised activities with adult rules and adults managing all of their interactions. And that loss of play means a loss of chances to grow, to learn how to get along, to build resilience, to experience disappointment. all of those important skills that we developed naturally as children in previous generations and had the opportunity to practice. And sometimes things went well and sometimes they didn't. But along the way, we built all of those wonderful skills. So we're going to talk today specifically about Play Club. Play Club is designed to be a before or after or somehow outside of the school day activity. It's a chance for mixed age groups of kids to play with very, very little supervision. I don't say no supervision because we do request that you have at least one adult on the playground or in the gym, wherever you're holding it, that serves as a lifeguard. It's very different from recess. Recess today is quite often a single age group, classes. I remember when I was a teacher, the fourth graders all came out at the same time. Teachers took turns being the monitors, and our job was to roam around the playground, watching for anything that might happen to make sure that we jumped in and avoided anybody getting hurt emotionally or physically. And we were also the source of all of the tattling, so that as soon as somebody had a problem, they came and asked us to solve it for us. The difference with Play Club is you're supposed to kind of stay in one place so that the kids can find you and they solve their own spats. That frequently means that there are some people who have their feelings hurt or might feel like something isn't fair. But when they come and tattle on that and the result is, okay, thank you for sharing that with me, how are you going to handle that? They quickly figure out they're not going to get the help and learn how to take care of things themselves. It's pretty amazing what happens. And that's why we are so excited to have Kevin Stinehart as our guest today. He is really one of our originals. I call him an original because, frankly, he's been with Let Grow longer than I have. I've been here 2 years working for Let Grow. Kevin's been doing Play Club for longer than that. So, Kevin, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and you can turn on your microphone and everything and join us. Let me give you a quick bio, and then I'm going to have him share some of his experiences. Kevin Stinehart is in his 10th year of teaching. He teaches 4th grade in a high poverty rural public school district. It's in South Carolina, and he has offered Play Club for his students since the beginning of Let Grow's Play Club initiative several years ago. So like I said, he's OG. He has seen this create improvements to his school's culture, and he initiated the Play Club, and it helped him earn District Teacher of the Year. Congratulations, in one of South Carolina's largest school districts, and he was a contender for South Carolina State Teacher of the Year. He's a Golden Apple Award recipient, a speaker on the benefits of play and nature-based learning, and he's married with 2 girls in elementary and middle school, respectively. He'd love to be in touch with you for further questions or guidance, so we will make sure to have his contact information for you afterwards. Kevin, you may regret that, I'm wondering, but since one of your name was one of the first names I heard from Lenore Skenazy, our president, when I first started with Let Grow. So you're truly an original, a wonderful advocate for play. And I think we'd love to start off by having you share why you started Play Club and how you made that first Play Club happen. Unmute. Or I'll unmute you. Hold on, let me see what's going on here. Somehow I have controlled you and not letting you unmute. Okay, let's see. Again, this is where when I'm on my own, I don't know how to handle these things. And I'm sure it's got to do with a scheduling. Hold on, let me look at my. Sorry about this, folks. You'd think I'd done this once or twice before, and yet somehow I am running into a panelist problem. And let's do this. Try that and see if you can unmute now. Got it? Will it let you? Oh gosh, thank you. Sorry, everybody.
Sorry about that.
Keep going.
All right. So yeah, I kind of came about Let Grow through the U.S. Play Coalition. I was able to attend a conference more than a few years back now, and meet Lenore there. And really at that conference and that meeting, it kind of changed my life as an educator. I thought I had a pretty firm understanding on education. I've been teaching for a few years at that point. But I had heard the same complaint from so many teachers, and even said it myself. Kids these days, they don't know how to share. They're not resilient. They have no perseverance skills. They don't know how to work together. And it wasn't really until going to that conference and starting the gears turning in my brain that I realized that it's because kids these days aren't having the same opportunities that we had growing up and that I had growing up to hone those skills with kids. And you said earlier, it sounds idyllic, but it's true. I went outside every day after school and played with all of the neighborhood kids. I can tell you still to this day who lived in every single house in my neighborhood. And that's a very different culture than a lot of us are raising our kids in today, sadly. And so we were learning life's most important skills at the time. We just didn't realize it. And so as a teacher, my content that I teach in science and social studies, 4th grade, is super important. But I came to realize that's great content, but it's not the skills that these kids are really going to need for the future. And so in teaching social studies, I teach American history, and I don't really care that much if you can't tell me the 13 original colonies, if you can't get along with anybody, if you can't communicate with people, if you don't know how to work well with others. All of those skills that you and I in the real world know are far more important than if you can tell me the 13 original colonies. And so I started to make those connections on just the value of play. And so when I found out about Play Club, it was the perfect opportunity to introduce more play to our students' lives, because as teachers, we don't have time and we don't have money. And with Play Club, it doesn't take any planning and it doesn't take any money. It's free. We just show up and let the kids play. And so it was the perfect opportunity for me to introduce a little more play to our students' lives. And it just kind of snowballed from there after just one Play Club session, one day a week.
Well, okay. So most people are going, yeah, it's free. It doesn't take any time. It doesn't take any money. That can't possibly be true. And you make it sound so easy. Tell us how you actually got, that first Play Club that you said was one day a week. Tell us the nuts and bolts. How did you make this happen as a 4th grade teacher? You're not even an administrator, right?
Right. So thankfully, through the Let Grow free resources, I downloaded those resources, read them through, talked it over with my principal. She was already on board with a lot of the ideas that I was slowly coming on board with, which was great. And so she's like, yeah, let's try it. And so I was like, well, I'm going to try to get one other teacher to help me supervise it, because I've never done anything like this before. And so I got my partner teacher in 4th grade and I talked her into it. And so we started doing it just one day a week and just for 1 hour. And we just had a few grade levels. We didn't open it to the entire school right away or anything. And the proof really was in the pudding. After we tried it one day a week, we knew we wanted to introduce it a couple days a week. And then eventually it became before school play clubs as well as after school. And the proof was in the pudding once we got going.
Okay, so let's say everybody on here is completely convinced and agrees that we need to do this, because I think that's kind of a given for most of us who have been in education. We know these kids need some free play. How did you decide who got to go? This was outside of the school day, so it's not recess. It's not let everybody out in the yard and assume that they can handle themselves without any kind of training or so did they sign up? Their parents must have allowed it. How'd you do that?
Yeah, so again, I just downloaded those free resources and sent them home with a few grade levels just to start with. So I teach 4th grade, so I sent them with 4th grade and then my students from the year before, which were now 5th graders, because I knew them and I knew their families and everything. Okay. So we just started small with kids that we knew, sent it home, and it clearly outlines everything in Let Grow's resources, what Play Club is, why it's important, how we're getting kids these soft skills that aren't really soft skills, really life's most important skills through play. And I was surprised at the turnout, even from the very first time we sent forms home. There really was a desire. I think parents were more on the same wavelength than we realized, the same wavelength as us. And so we had a lot of students sign up right away. I sent them home in they have little Friday folders. Sent them home in their Friday folders, and Monday, first thing, they were turning them back in left and right. So we had a waiting list even from the very beginning, and we still have waiting lists to this day, which is wild because we offer it multiple days a week now. We offer it to every grade level, and there's still a big waiting list.
Apparently there's not enough play going on, right? So how did you decide, what was your limit? Did you have a certain number that you decided you could take, and how did you pick that number?
Yeah. So I just kind of based it around the classroom size. So, and our classrooms are between 20 and 25 students usually. My sister, who teaches up in Michigan, has more like 30 students. So I was like, let's try it with 25 students per teacher. So if there's 2 teachers, 25, we've got 50 students maybe that we can have. And so that's what we did. And then, I mean, we've shifted it so much, especially with COVID, different numbers, different grade levels coming, but ideally, yeah, mixed grades, at least 3 grades at the same time. So right now we have kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade on one day, and then 3rd, 4th, and 5th on another day. And before the pandemic hit, we were offering it every day before school for different grade levels. So that's kind of how we started it. And again, it's shifted. And that's the thing I love about Play Club is you can shift it with whatever's going on in the world or whatever's going on at your school, because each school is so different. You might not have, we have a big playground outside. You might not have that. So you could use your gym, you could use classrooms. We've used classrooms on rainy days before, treated it kind of like a hands-off indoor recess. The format can really shift however you need, which is great because every population's different clientele, different needs. So
Right.
it's such a moldable format.
And did you say it was just an hour?
So yeah, so we started with just an hour. We now are doing an hour and 45 minutes. We've done 2 hours. Before school play club is about half an hour. So we open up the school half an hour before school, and the benefits are kind of logical when you think about it. But kids that are usually late for school are not really late on play club days before school, and because they get to go play with their friends. Exactly, all these things that make sense. And truancy issues go down. Kids want to be at school if they know they have play club, and they're going to have opportunities to play with their peers beyond just recess. And so our school now is fully bought in. We have 13 teachers that volunteer, not just me and another teacher putting it on. Because so many people are seeing the benefits. It's been huge.
That's something that I find really amazing, that teachers volunteer. I get a lot of questions when people are asking about starting the play club. And by the way, thanks for your kudos for our materials. We're always trying to make sure we can provide as much as we can. And I get a lot of questions from people about, well, who supervises and how do you train them, and what about paying them? Because there's this, I hate to say this because I've been a teacher, but there's this perception sometimes by the public that teachers don't want to do anything at all outside their contracted school hours. And yet you tell me you've got 13 teachers in your school that are doing this because they want to.
And it's so great too, because once I got it going and I was doing everything at the beginning again with my partner teacher, all the other teachers in the school started to see the effects in their classroom. Kids are coming in, if it's before school play club, they're coming in actually ready to learn. They've had a chance to communicate with their peers, talk about what video game they played last night or whatever it is. They've had a chance to get out their wiggles or whatever. So they're ready to actually come in and focus on what you're going to teach them, because they've had opportunity to do what is socially appropriate for them to do. To talk to their friends, to play.
So what did they do before play club, before school? What did that look like? I think I've seen a video.
Yeah, so historically, for way before I was even at the school, kids would come in 7:25 and sit silently in the hallway, and they would just sit there until school officially started at 8. And so obviously that didn't sit right with any of us, but we're like, well, what do we want them to do? And so starting play club before school was perfect, because now they come in 7:25 and they can go right outside and play. And
in that case, do these kids sign up for this, or are you just open so that anybody who gets there at that point is free to play?
Yeah, so after school play club is where students sign up, because they will need someone to come and pick them up. But before school play club is just whoever shows up can go outside. And so we got that going just about a month before the pandemic hit and shut us down. So now we're still in progress of getting that up and going again. But you know how it is. That's the world right now. We're just being adaptable.
Well, it makes so much sense nowadays when you think that buses drop kids off. Everybody gets there kind of at a different time. And some kids end up having to sit around for a long time, and others maybe don't have enough time to start. I'm curious, what does that look like with the busing and the parents dropping off? Do you have parents dropping off earlier? Do you have more kids taking the bus because it gets them there sooner?
Yeah, so we've always had parents get there pretty early and just kind of wait around, even at the end of the school day. Some parents will arrive an hour before school's out, just
Wow.
sit in the car. Which, as a parent, I understand. Sometimes you just need some quiet time away from everything. But they will drop them off. Yeah, like you said, different times. Now with COVID protocols in place, we've done staggered arrivals, so we specifically have different times, and so it's very different now. So I don't really want to
Mm,
compare now to what hopefully will be next year, back to normal,
mhm, mhm.
hopefully. And so, but yeah, buses arrive at different times. Kids arrive with, that are car riders at different times, and now we even have kids walking to school again, which is kind of exciting, which we hadn't had a
Wow.
lot of that before. So yeah,
That's
all
wonderful
kinds of different
because a
arrivals.
lot of those things go along with our philosophies at Let Grow that kids should be doing things for themselves. Let them walk to school. And
Mhm.
I don't know about you, but I never just sat in a hallway. I remember
Yep.
before school time being out on the playground. And when the bell rang, then there was some place you ran to line up. If it was raining, we did let them in, like, but they had to kind of hang out in certain parts of the hallways. And I remember back then
Mhm.
too, I was on what was called service squad when I was in, like, I don't know, fifth grade maybe. And that meant I had a badge on my arm, and I was in charge of, the hallway and not letting the kids come past a certain point.
Yep. Yeah, we
Those
had hall
things.
monitors.
Yes, yes.
Yep,
And if
I
any of you
remember
have
them.
ever heard Lenore Skenazy tell her story about the fact that, she walked to school when she was a kid, and she was like in third grade, and it was a fifth grader who was the crossing guard, whom, by the way, she did marry. Another story, if you haven't heard it, it's hilarious. But anyway, okay, so letting the kids on the playground in the morning is something where you then have K-5. What types of behavior do you see happening when the kids are mixed up with that? I mean, shouldn't we be worried about a kindergartner and a big fifth grader?
Yeah, you would think. I mean, there are definitely parent fears at the beginning. Even still with Play Club, sometimes parents will ask questions about, so my third grader is going to be hanging out with fifth graders, and so far we have not had any big issues at all. I mean, we haven't even had a single fight yet, which you'd think with such a hands-off approach that you'd have an escalation of behaviors, but we've actually seen the opposite. And I love the Let Grow quote. I actually quote it myself all the time. When adults step back, kids step up, because it really is what we've seen. And I've seen it with my own daughters, times that we've let them try things without us there. They actually are better behaved than we are when we are standing there, because, and Dr. Peter Gray has that great quote about, when the adults are there, the adults are the adults and the kids are the kids. But when the adults leave, the kids are allowed the opportunity to mature a little bit and try new things for themselves. And we've really seen that, not only as a school, but I've seen that as a parent. And it's been so great for our students. They really have come a long way, especially our students that had behavior issues. We have multiple students that had office referrals to the principal, 3, 4, 5 times a year, that now they're maybe going once a year or 0 times in some cases. We had
Mhm.
one student that had 3 office referrals in the course of 1 week from 3 different teachers. And so I talked to his mom about, could we possibly sign him up for Play Club? And she's like, sure, we'll do whatever. And so we signed him
You
up for
put
Play
you, you
Club.
put you put a bad kid in play club?
Yeah, it's the best place for him, I'm telling you. And so, but I mean, even me, who's a full believer in this, was still a little bit nervous that he'd continue those behaviors in Play Club and ruin our nice little happy. For the first, half hour of the first day, he did kind of a little bit what we thought he would. He kind of stayed off by himself. Nobody talked to him. He didn't talk to anybody. And this is a kid that always would walk around, shoulder slumped, just kind of angry at the world. Didn't have any friends. Didn't really talk to anybody. And then after about a half an hour, someone kicked the ball to him, and then he kicked it back, and we saw him kind of starting to play a little bit, and we're just watching wide-eyed, what's going to happen next. And he started actually playing and started even running. We'd never seen this kid even run. And then he smiled, and we've never seen this kid smile. That was huge. And by the end of that first day of Play Club, we even heard him laugh. And so the teacher that was supervising with me had tears in her eyes, like
Wow.
just the transformation of 1 full hour. At the time, it was just 1 hour of play with peers, because this was a kid that kept losing recess time. Teachers might make him walk the lap or write a reflection on his behavior, or just trying to
Mhm.
come up with something, doing the best we can as teachers, something to get him to think about this. But he, in the process, he's not playing with his peers. He's not having any friends. He doesn't have any reason to want to be at school. He doesn't have
Right.
social connections that we want him to have. And so play club really made a huge difference in his life that continued on afterwards. So for the rest of the year, he never got another office referral to the principal's office, and that carried on when he went to 5th grade. And from what I hear, he's doing great in middle school now. So
Oh, he's in middle school now.
yes, he's
Wow.
in middle school now. So
Now, what
just
about the kids that were interacting with them? Did you see some growth or anything?
yeah.
What did they learn from that experience?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to sit them down and interview them one by one, but it was great just to see that, kids that others might view as a bully, that he's a person too, and there are reasons that he would act the way that he acts. If you're angry at the world and you don't have any friends and the world is a cold, dark place, then you're going to act like it's a cold, dark place. And so if you can have some relationships, I mean, even one, like goodness, even one good friendship can get you through anything sometimes. But because he didn't have any of those social bonds, he was angry all the time. And so started to let his guard down. And those initial relationships he started in play club carried on as friendships later on, and will hopefully carry him on for years to come.
Absolutely. I want to pull back up that chart on your principal referrals, because I'd like to ask you some questions specifically on a couple of those things. So I'm gonna share that screen again. This is such powerful data. Hopefully everybody can see that. If you can't, pop it in the chat. But I think it's amazing. Now, first of all, I think it's important to note that this is all pre-pandemic data. We all recognize that a lot of what has happened with the pandemic has caused problems for kids socially. Certainly, they haven't had opportunities to play. And so a lot of that is unfortunate, and we need to really help them work through that. But I think it's important to understand that just in regular child development, regular normal school time, which hopefully we'll get back to, you saw huge benefits across the board. Now, I know this is like a 55% total reduction in principal referrals, which, I mean, who wouldn't sign up for that at cost even, but for free? But then I'm curious, because in looking at some of the individual types of referrals, and obviously other things were happening, and I think you added an extra recess. So we can't definitely define this as a causation relationship, but I'm not surprised to see some of the kicking, hitting, and pushing possibly types of things be reduced. The truancy you already addressed. You don't want to miss school. And I guess I'm curious. So the teacher in me says, if they're absent from school, they don't get to then show up at play club after school, do they?
Right. Yeah. At that point, we don't even have our front office isn't even open for you to sign your kid in. So.
Okay. I kind of assumed that.
No,
so that's a good reason to get them to school when they don't necessarily want to. Tell me about the defiance and refusal. How do you think participation in play club helped with some of that?
Yeah. So a lot of times our students that are ones that are prone to defy a teacher's request or refuse. Those are the students, kind of like the student we talked about earlier, who others considered a bully. They a lot of times have deeper issues going on, issues that we can't easily address as teachers. You ask your class to do something and everybody does, except the one student that you totally knew wasn't going to participate, or totally knew, was going to have that issue. And those are the kids that have, all kinds of different issues, home issues, life issues, things that are beyond their control, things that are beyond our control, things that just go far deeper. And so getting them the chance to play, whether it's through physical activity and that's really what they need, or whether it's through social bonds like we talked about, or whether it's just they're sad about something that's happened to them, maybe a relative passed away or something, and being outside in the fresh air with friends could turn their mood around. I mean, there's a lot of good data supporting just the change in attitude and the change of mood when you get to move, even as adults. So definitely as kids, being able to play. Yeah, your demeanor.
I think Peter Gray would probably also say that part of the benefit has to do with the mixed ages. When kids are playing with children who are older and or younger than them, one, they're able to find some friends maybe that are at the right level with them, because kids are of all different maturities, and there may be some 5th graders who are more comfortable playing with the younger kids and vice versa. But I also know that a lot of what happens is modeling. and younger kids want to be like the older kids. So that may be an added benefit to this mixed age play, is students are starting to see and model behavior that as teachers we definitely want to encourage.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, who hasn't been the little kid with around some older kids that wanted to be like them and act like them and
Uh-huh.
talk like them? Absolutely.
Right. And then I'm also curious, I don't know how this would, or if you can even address this, but
Yeah.
when I created this graph, I looked at the threats there. There were 9 threats the year before, and it looks like I'm
Yeah.
missing a bar. I'm not. You've
Hmm.
actually had
Hmm.
0. What do you think
Yeah.
that, do you know anything about that or can
Yeah.
share anything?
So, I mean, a lot of times, and there's, a lot of research that goes into roughhousing play and all kinds of different deeper issues that I'm not qualified to speak to. But, you know, when we have a classroom of boys, typically compared to a classroom of girls, they're a lot more physical. They need to move more. They need to not wrestle each other, but they need to be more physical and engaged in more physical play. And
Mhm.
so when they have the opportunity to be physical, to go outside, to play, whether it's just climbing on the monkey bars or whether it's playing tag or playing basketball or just whatever, when they have the opportunity to do that outside, then
Mhm.
you don't see as many behaviors inside the classroom. And we've seen that time and time again with students. And before I started Play Club, or before I even made these connections, a lot of times I try to offer more group work in my classroom, thinking, well, they'll have a chance to work together. But really, it ended up being the whole time I'm just putting out fires left and right of, she said this to me and she doesn't want to work with me, and can I start my own group, and I'm going to join this group because I hate these people now. And so I thought I was doing a good thing as a teacher, but the content wasn't even being taught because they had all these other issues going
Drama.
on. So when they could address all of those through play, then they can come to the classroom actually ready to focus on the content, which is obvious to me now, but at the time was not obvious. And it's revolutionized the way that I teach and the way that I think, and
That's
getting
that's
kids as many
amazing.
play
So
opportunities.
simple,
Yeah.
but so powerful. And then
Yeah.
the other one that really got me was the school bus incidents. Do you
Yeah.
do you see a correlation between play club and behavior on the school bus?
I don't think it's specific to the school bus itself. I think it's just a general, whether they're in line in the cafeteria, or they're in the bathroom, or they're in
Mhm.
on the school bus, or in the hallway, in the classroom, just the culture and the atmosphere of the school, even for the non-participants of Play Club, even for students for whatever reason that are not able to do Play Club, maybe they're on the wait list, or maybe their parents don't get them to school till the last second anyway. It doesn't matter if it's before school. Just the culture of the school, when you have so many kids that are getting those deeper needs addressed, it rubs off
Mhm.
on everyone else. We talk all the time in my classroom about chain reactions. You do something kind to someone, they're more prone to do something kind to someone else, and it just keeps going around, and vice versa is true as well. So
It's
these students
contagious.
that are having, those deeper needs addressed, it rubs off on the students even that aren't participating.
I think it's amazing, and I love to hear these stories. I'm sure everybody else on the in the group is excited to hear these things too. But let's get to some of the questions. We've had a number of questions that some folks sent in as a kind of a pre thing, and then I've also got some questions that have come up when I'm talking to teachers who are interested in starting it. Because to be frank, there are a lot of reasons not to do this. People can come up with a whole lot of what ifs, and want to make sure that part of what you can do is help put some people's minds at ease. So I got to tell you that nothing in life is free, and you're telling me this is free, and you've got teachers to volunteer. What's your advice for a teacher either trying to try grassroots on their own, because this is a little tricky if you don't have buy-in from your administration, or to those that are administrators who are watching this now or will watch it later, as to how to get that buy-in and get the volunteers. And do they have to be teachers? Do you have teachers for a specific reason? What about parents or others?
Yeah, I mean, it really could just be anybody. The reason that we've used teachers in the past just is because we know that they're safe people. We know that they're trained. We know that they are responsible enough where we could bring in parents, and hopefully they're good and we'll try to train them. But it takes all the hassle out when it is people who work for the school. And it doesn't have to be a teacher. It could be support staff. It could be
Mhm.
someone else in the building. It could really be anybody. But my advice would just be to start small, because if you think this might possibly work, just try it. It doesn't have to be 3 days a week. It doesn't have to be for 2 hours. It could be, 1 day a week for 45 minutes or I would just say start small, because if you start small, you really will see the benefits and see that it actually does work, and then want to do what we've done and expand it to multiple days a week and multiple grade levels. And again, the waiting list, even for us, still is just so incredibly long. Like the wait list is almost as long as the kids that get to participate. And so again, I would just say start small. Don't be afraid of any naysayers. Thankfully, we haven't had a lot of pushback. I thought we'd have a lot more. But I think even the parents see it in just how their kids are acting at home as well, because like I
Sure.
said, I think it carries into other places, the school bus or the hallway or at home. And parents just see it as like, oh, my kid's coming home tired, and I'm glad got their energy out. But there's so many other issues
Right.
once they've done play club for a little while, they start to notice at home as well.
And I get the idea that teachers are trained. One of the probably most important thing a teacher would know automatically is where's the phone if something actually happens. A kid could fall. Oh my gosh, a kid could fall off of the swings or something. And that's going to require some kind of intervention. And so in those cases of a true emergency, your teachers have that type of training. I think parents also could get that. It's a matter of making sure that they are given kind of the basics in order to know how to respond. Where's the first aid kit? Something as simple as that that we take for granted. I think that I wanted to ask, and we've got some great questions coming in, but a couple people that I've heard from have asked about liability. And we live, unfortunately, in a very litigious society. And I made the comment, okay, if a kid falls and breaks their arm falling off the swing, most administrators today, their first fear is that the parents are going to sue them. And so tell me about insurance, liability. I assume your administrator talked about that or considered that?
Yeah, so I thought that it would be an issue. So when I first presented it to my principal, I was like, what do we have to do to make sure that we can pull this off legally and everything? And I was surprised to find out that we actually, as long as we have adults there who are trained and we know what we're doing as far as safety goes, and we're actively supervising, even if it's from a distance, you don't have to be up involved in the game. As long as you are actively supervising, it's really seen as far as legality in South Carolina. I can't speak to everywhere, and I'm definitely not a law expert, as really the same as recess. So I was surprised to find out that in our case, there was nothing we needed to do, no extra insurance, no legal things to worry about. As long as we're there and we're actively supervising, that's what it is.
Yeah, I know I've spoken to educators in other states, and a lot of them, what we are told is that in most cases, when they go and ask their insurance companies about coverage, they're told that it covers play club just as it would any other in school or before or after school. Basically, it's the fact that there are some adults there and it's happening on school grounds. So in most cases, there aren't any issues. And I think, was there another country that was encouraging risky play and giving, I think it might be Sweden or something. I'll have to find that and see if I can share it. It's fascinating because insurance companies are starting to realize, look, if they're playing with a little risk as kids, they're going to grow up learning how to deal with risk, which makes them more insurable as adults.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It does make sense.
And when everything's not padded, you pay attention to what's around you, and so it's a very different child playing.
Okay, I think it's great. And you have parents when they sign up, they're signing some kind of waiver. I know we include a kind of a pledge in our kit. So do you have something specific they sign?
Yeah, so we still use exactly the same resources that we've used since the beginning from Let Grow. It outlines everything better than I ever could do, and has a place for the parent to sign, for the student to sign. And so that's exactly what we use every time. It explains the rules of play club, which are extremely limited, but stay on the grounds, no physically hurting anyone, listen to the adults.
Those are it, aren't they?
Interfere, and just listen to the adults who will interfere only if they must, which again doesn't really ever happen, maybe twice.
Right. Oh, looks like we've got one of our good friends, Patty, found something I was talking about and posted it in the chat. Awesome. Thank you, Patty. Okay, so if we're not worried about liability insurance and we've got some volunteers, off we go. Sounds great. How do you get this started if you're a parent? We have a lot of parents that recognize that they want this, or they live in neighborhoods and want to even let their kids go out and just play outside after school, but nobody else is out there. And so these are the types of things that parents really love too. Do you have any advice for parents as to how to maybe bring this to their school and see if they can get something going?
Yeah, I mean, if you can even find one teacher that you think might be sympathetic and get their ear for a little while, there's so many great resources now that Let Grow has put out, and videos and articles and so many great things, that if they can just get a teacher to possibly believe part of it, and have an open door, it really is, all of the proof and all of the evidence is there. That kind of is how I got started into it in a roundabout way. The head of the US Play Coalition's daughter was in my classroom. And she was like, would you like to attend our play conference sometime? And I was like, oh, that's cute, play. Sure, why not? And so I went to the conference and it revolutionized my life. When I met Lenore and learned about Play Club and learned about all of the initiatives that Let Grow is doing. But yeah, if you can just find one teacher and work your way in, that one teacher really can champion that idea to the rest of the school. And like I said, start small. So if you can have one teacher on your side and start Play Club once a week, even if it's with you and the teacher, if you could get trained to start that, that would be phenomenal.
And I'll also say, in partial answer to one of our other questions, parents can start these on their own. We have our guide for schools. We have a second version that is for parents who want to start their own play club with their neighborhood or their community. They're not little bit different. And when you request the guide, we will send both of them automatically now. I used to send just the school one, and then someone say, oh, I'm a parent. I'll give it all to you. And so you can have play club in a local park or, whatever type of location you can find. And after school programs like Boys and Girls Club or YMCA, they can do it too. Parks and Rec. I mean, actually, it's pretty darn easy. I'm curious though about kind of the location. You're talking about a school playground, and I've seen videos of your school playground. You've got some equipment and things like that. Not everybody's got a really great playground or equipment. So tell me about, how much space you think they need? What type of environment do they need? What type of stuff? Because you said free. So do I have to go buy something?
Yeah, no. So this is the benefit of loose parts play, is how it's known in the play community. But it really doesn't have to be anything fancy. It doesn't have to be a swing set. It doesn't have to be a slide. All those things that we put constructs around. This is what play means today. But when you and I were growing up, that's not what play had always meant. I didn't have a swing at my house or a slide at my house. I went outside and we literally kicked cans or brought marbles outside or whatever. So in our case, for loose parts play, we bring out old boxes. The cafeteria always has boxes. And so I'll ask them to save anything that's big. And so we'll bring out big boxes, and those become everything. Of course, if you've ever seen a kid with a box, it's everything. Yeah. From a rocket ship to a castle to they've invented all kinds of things I would never have thought of to do. They'll cut them down to size sometimes and sit on them and go down the slide because they realize they can go a little faster, or try all kinds of different wonderful things that I never would think of. So it can be what you and I would see as junk. Loose parts can be really anything. And as far as, if it's at a school setting, you of course would want to talk to an administrator about what are we allowed to have out there. If we have rusty things or sharp things, that's going to be a different category. But in our case, it's, it might be pool noodles. We've had balloons at one time. We've had boxes we have pretty much every week. But it can be anything. It doesn't have to be.
And the PE teacher usually has all kinds of cool stuff in a closet somewhere that's
100%.
They're willing to share and let them have it. One of our folks has asked about the idea of fences, and it's interesting, in looking for how much space is ideal. And I think we obviously don't want to get hung up on what's the perfect environment, because I think the real message of Play Club is it doesn't matter what the environment is. You just need the kids, and they'll come up with games. I mean, when you think about inner city kids play games, in the street, And if you live out on a farm, maybe you're out, in the fields or in the woods and things like that. It's different for every group. And I think what's important, and maybe we'll get there someday, is some of these fences will maybe come down. I know a lot of times I've heard people compare recess at school to a prison yard, which is painful, because you certainly don't want to hear that. But too often, real tall fences, and the kids are only allowed to do certain things in certain areas, and they're on a timer, and they have to be on their best behavior. That seems kind of harsh, but maybe someday we'll actually get rid of some of the fences. Another question we're getting is special training. How do teachers who frankly have been taught to be prison guards in a little ways? I mean, right? I mean, when I did recess duty, that was keep moving. Kids shouldn't be able to predict where you're going to be, so they don't do something they shouldn't, and you're constantly scanning. And I mean, that sounds a lot like being a guard. And we say play club should be loosely supervised and more of a lifeguard kind of thing. So how do you get the teachers to step back?
Yeah, it is a very different vibe than recess. And so it takes, it's a learning curve. There are teachers that take them a few times of doing play club before they really can get into more of a hands-off approach. And especially, my teaching partner, her daughter was in play club, and she was swinging on her belly on a swing, going around the way you're not supposed to go on a swing. And she's like, I'm having such a hard time not intervening right now. And I was like, just let her do it, see what happens. Like, what's the worst that can happen, basically? And of course, nothing happened other than she had a blast. And so there's a learning curve for teachers. We're used to stepping in right away, being the referee. He was in line first. You need to get around him. But when we took that hands-off approach and started to see the benefits, and I reminded them and showed them resources from Let Grow, even from the beginning, before I took any new people on as volunteers, I sent them resources, made them understand what it was and that it was different than recess. And once they agreed to that philosophy, then it's been great, and they've seen the evidence now themselves with our students. But
I'm guessing that might have helped get more volunteers, because it's a lot of fun to watch kids play.
Oh yeah, our principal now volunteers all the time. She's like, "This is one of the highlights of my week."
Wow!
To be out here and watch them play, because it is. They will entertain you the entire time.
Right, exactly.
The things they come up with are never things that you would ever think of.
One of the suggestions that we've made, I don't know if it's in our actual guide at this point, is that keeping kind of an observation journal as the supervisor. If you've got something where you're kind of recording some things, it really forces you to be more of an observer. Plus, it's fun to get those stories and videos. I know you're great at getting videos of your kids at play club and sending them to us. By the way, anybody doing this, we want all of your content. Please share. We want to hear about it. And
it's great, and stuff that you would never think of. Just to piggyback off that, this was last week. We had students that we have a whole gardening section that's not a part of the playground, but it is outside. And some kids got into there, and I'm like, okay, what's about to happen here? And they got a shovel, and the end fell off really easily. It just goes back on and off. And they got the top part of our composting bin, which was like a square that was hollowed out inside, and they made a TV show. So they used the pole as a boom mic, and they set up the screen, and I never would have dreamed to do that. And it's just junk, these loose parts, things that we just had laying around that I wouldn't think to even include in play club. So yeah, just follow the child, because it's incredible to see what they come up with.
Do you let the kids bring any of their own loose parts?
Yeah, so we let them bring pretty much anything that's not a device.
Key. No batteries, right?
Right, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Although we've cheated a little bit, because I've let them bring race cars before that were, motorized race cars, but no devices. And so, yeah, they're allowed to bring pretty much anything, other than, of course, we have to follow school rules. They're not going to bring anything sharp or dangerous or anything. But they brought in all kinds of stuff. Everything from roller skates to, I had a kid ask if they could bring their bike, and I was like, I don't know if we can fit our bike on the school bus. But we had anything you can imagine they've brought or tried to bring. And it's great. They have a blast with it. And some of it can become a show and tell, because they want to show their friends what they have, or this little toy they got for Christmas or whatever. But they have a blast. class. That's awesome.
Here's a really important question. So you've shared that you haven't had any fights or anything, and let's be real, kids are kids, and sometimes things happen. And you may get the occasional student who maybe can't handle play club or is having a really bad day. So, bullying behaviors and all of that is something that's being taken very seriously in schools. And so there are a lot of protocols and things like that. So how do you handle behavior if it either looks like they're crossing the line or actually do, say, hit another kid or push another kid? How do you handle that?
So a lot of it is just prep up front. So the very first day of play club, I pull out the forms they've already signed and go over it with them in case their parent didn't read it to them or they didn't read it and just signed off, So these are the rules of play club. We will follow these rules. You are not allowed to physically hurt people. You are not, and it's a short list of rules. So they all understand.
Sure.
And at school and during recess, there's way more rules. So they understand what they're supposed to do and what they're not supposed to do. But it says on there as well that if you are breaking the rules, if you are hurting someone, if something like that is happening, then you'll be asked to sit out, and you're welcome to return the next play club, but you have to sit out for that day. And so there have been a couple incidents like that, not anything huge, but small enough incidents where kids were trying to get physical. And so thankfully, it didn't become anything because we're watching. And so we see it right away and, oh, all right, let's go talk to that student, have them sit out and explain, what they did wrong. And they understand, they know what they're doing because they've been prepped and they go to school. So.
Well, and isn't that part of the value is in this kind of play, kids learn how to solve problems, how not to get into those spats, because they want to keep the play right. going. They're motivated to not have those issues.
And that's the other thing too that I wanted to mention, with recess in a lot of schools being 10 minutes or 15 minutes, the fact that play club is so much longer, and again, it can be as long or as short as you want it to be, but a lot of times at recess, they just get a game started after all those negotiations and arguments and everything. By the time they get started, it's time to go back inside. So at play club, they really have enough time to truly engage in actual play and actual good, enriching moments and conversations and things like that, where they wouldn't always get in a recess, especially in some places that have 10-minute recesses or 15 minutes.
And so some of these things that the kids are allowed to bring and everything, are those accessible just during play club, or do they bring it out to recess? I mean, is there a definition as to what's allowed where?
Yeah, it just depends on their teacher. Some teachers don't want them taking things out. Other teachers do. So it just depends on what their teacher allows. I allow them to take most things out. If something's expensive, I don't really want them bringing it anyway, because there's always the fear that it's going to break and someone's going to be, a parent's going to be, I'll say a parent, it's never the kids, it's the parents, that the parents are going to be angry about it. But we really haven't had issues. It's just a fear, you always have in the back of your mind. But yeah, every teacher is different. And again, that's the thing I love about Play Club is you can adapt these things for your setting and what you feel comfortable with and what you don't feel comfortable with, and how long you want it to be or how short and how many supervisors you have. It's such a great program because you can really work it in any way that is comfortable for you and using what you have in your place.
Yeah. We're going to have to tie up. We've got a lot of chat going on amongst some parents asking about trying this. So I just wanted to bring up a couple of things. Parents can do a lot on their own. And so, getting a play club together with your own neighborhood can be as simple as starting small with a few of your own kids. And again, it's the same kind of rules. The guide we have for parents includes a similar type of pledge, which basically says, look, we're not going to step in. We're not going to tell the kids how to play. And, we're going to let them be kids. And so, you start small with your own group and then you can get bigger. Some folks have advertised, next door, Facebook, things like that, and increased. It's really just a matter of kind of jumping in and trying it. I can say that one of the things that we are working on at Let Grow is some kind of a bit more of an intense program in order to be able to bring more support to schools. We believe very strongly this should be happening in every school, but it takes someone like you to kind of come to it and be willing to jump in and do it. And so we're going to be piloting a more intensive program that we're developing over the summer that will include things like a training for teachers, because on the one hand, it seems like you shouldn't have to train someone to not do something. But in a lot of ways, it's hard to overcome those types of things. So so anybody in schools, keep in touch with us, and we'll be advertising a lot of those things as we get out there. The other thing I can tell you is coming soon as a sneak preview for the parents especially is some changes to our website. We will be adding some members only forums, as well as a friend finder, so that you can find other parents that are also Let Grow members in your area and find some kids to start a play club, and a school recognition program as well, that will be celebrating the schools that are doing Let Grow programs, not just play club, but also our project. And you'll be able to hopefully find a school near you where they're Let Grow. So we're very excited about really getting this out there now that we're starting to move past the pandemic. And you're on my list. I know you've already gotten a Let Grow hat. I'll have to come up with some more stuff.
Thank you. And I'll piggyback on that real quick. I would love it if someone in my community, maybe it needs to be me, would do that at a local park, maybe on a Saturday. So the way you sign your kid up for volleyball or soccer or football, but instead you're dropping them off at a park with someone who's trained through Let Grow, or however you want to do it, to just let them have free play time on the weekends or after school or whatever. I think that'd be phenomenal.
Absolutely. And I think a park day is something that Lenore tried to do in New York one day. I'm got to be honest, unstructured free play and drop my kid off so that I can go have a cup of coffee or get some errands done. That's the way life was a few generations ago. So hopefully we can bring some of those things back. We didn't necessarily get to all the questions. I think we got to most of them. By the way, for the asking about middle schools, yes, middle schools need play club too. And so do high school students. I can tell you there's a whole Steel Sports, a whole soccer organization that added 10 minutes of free play before practice every time, and the high school kids are making up their own games. So let's not pretend that it ends at 5th or 6th grade when you get out of elementary school. So I'm going to close, everybody. Thank you very much, Kevin. Great to have you here. And you are available for, get ready for it, for consultation and help. And we will, in the email, send that out with the best way to contact you. So make sure that what I have, the information I have, is what you really want me to send.
Please do. Please contact me.
Okay, that's awesome. And we may have you on again. And to some of the parents that have been in the chat, I can't wait to go through the chat and kind of looking at it. We may be able to have, additional topics. Maybe we'll get some parent panelists on. And please stay in touch. Let us know what you're doing. Let us support you. It's really all about what's right for the kids. So thanks so much. And hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye.